I buried my wife on a Tuesday, and by Thursday my son was measuring me for a nursing home. He said it real calm, like he was reading a weather report. Sign over the Toronto house. You're moving to a home. I smiled and signed everything. He thought he won. What he didn't know about was the oceanfront cottage on the Cape, and the $270,000 in yearly royalties my wife left flowing like a quiet river with my name on the check. Name's Arthur Bennett. Art, 67, Boston-born, union electrician, retired with calluses that don't wash off. I can still run a line clean and pull a permit without breaking a sweat. My wife, Margaret Maggie, wrote books about ordinary people who didn't feel ordinary once she got done with them. She had a way with endings. She'd say, "We don't finish. We land." I liked that. When the TV folks optioned her third series, I built her a little writing nook in the back room and pretended not to notice when the checks got larger and her smile got smaller toward the end. Cancer doesn't care about royalties. But after she passed, she made sure I had heat in the winter and coffee in the morning without having to ask anyone for permission. My son, Jason, is 38, a real estate guy with good hair and the type of watch you rent if you don't want to admit you can't afford it. He works rooms like they owe him a favor. He calls people buddy when he's about to ask for something big. He wasn't always like that. He used to sit on the garage floor with me, handing me a screwdriver without being asked, chewing licorice and talking about dinosaurs. I still see that kid sometimes, mostly when he's tired and forgets to be slick. 2 weeks before she died, Maggie called me into the kitchen. We had a folder out with our attorney's card clipped to the front. Ava Lynn, sharp eyes, softer hands. The kind of person who makes you feel like the world is chaotic, but this one file is in order. Art, Maggie said, tapping the folder. I need you to promise me something. Jason's a good boy, but he gets dazzled by shiny things. When I'm gone, don't let him drive your life like a getaway car. Okay, I said, even though the room looked like it was tilting. She squeezed my hand and kept going. We met with Ava over tea and cold butter cookies. Paperwork is not romance, but it's how love doesn't get misfiled. We set up a trust for the royalties, irrevocable, all buttoned up. The Whitaker/Harbor Trust, named after the streets we walked when we were still stupid in love. I'd get the income for life. After me, it goes to our granddaughter, Lila, who's 10 and writes little notes in the margins of library books, which is probably a different kind of crime, but I won't rat her out. We created another trust, Blue Heron, for the cottage on the Cape we bought quiet through an LLC when the TV money got weird. We called it a shack with better opinions, but it's a postcard, weathered shingles, a porch that argues with the wind, a stove that pops like a campfire. We made sure the Toronto house had the right restrictions and a life estate recorded the way Canadians do it. Plain language, polite, ironclad. You can't shove an old guy out of his own kitchen because you've got an open house scheduled for Saturday. Maggie wrote 2 letters, blue ink, careful loops. One for me, one for Jason. She sealed them and made me promise I wouldn't open mine until after the funeral. I promised. She smiled like a person finishing a project. The funeral came. It wasn't cinematic. It was damp and tired. People from every chapter of our life hugged me like they were handing me pieces of a plate I didn't know was broken. Jason handled the reception like a stage manager. Flowers here, cars there, check, 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 until the last casserole dish left the house. Then he sat with me in the quiet. We stared at the cheap rug like it had answers. "Dad," he said finally, "we gotta be practical." He had that tone he uses with clients, like a lullaby made of spreadsheets. "You can't be rattling around alone. Come on. Sign over the Toronto house, and move into a nice place where people know what to do if you fall. I'll handle the paperwork. All of it. No stress." I looked at him. I really looked. The tight jaw. The eyes that used to be mine. He believed he was rescuing me from my life. "You sure that's what you want, kid? I'm looking out for you." "Okay," I said. "Bring whatever you need. We'll do it right." He brought a mobile notary and a stack of papers thick as a deli sandwich. The man loves a highlighter. He had tabs in 4 colors. "Sign here. And here. An initial there, Dad." I read slow. Always have. Drives hustlers crazy. Half of what he slid over was what Ava had already prepared. My power of attorney, revocable the minute anyone tried funny business. Healthcare proxy with me in charge unless I wasn't. Language all over that said in polite legal English, Arthur is not an idiot. The deed transfer paperwork for Toronto was dressed up, but the life estate and restrictions sat inside it like rebar. He didn't see it. He saw the goal line. You good? He asked. Yup. I signed. He smiled. I smiled right back and kept my hands on the table so I didn't reach for his and spook him with love. He thinks signing is surrender. Sometimes it's just the last step of a plan. He put me in the car the next morning and drove to an assisted living place he called a home, like the word would stick harder if he made it small. The lobby smelled like lemon and someone pretending to be fresh bread. A woman named Ms. Patel ran the desk with a smile that said yes until you gave her a reason to say no. I checked in for a trial month. They gave me a room that looked like a hotel, tried to remember your grandma's house from a photograph. Jason helped put my bag by the bed, glanced around like he was staging the joint, hugged me in front of a nurse so it would count, and left quick to take a call in the parking lot. Ms. Patel handed me a schedule. Tai Chi bingo, crafts, men's coffee, a movie night. My ego wanted to sneer. My feet wanted to sit down. I ended up at Tai Chi, wobbling next to a Marine named Gordon who moved like a truck turning. We laughed. Later, I found a card table and played Scrabble with two women, Arlene and June, who smiled sweet as sugar packets and then wrecked me with 7-letter words. Arlene laid down quarter and said, "Double word, dear," like she was apologizing. I liked it there more than I wanted to, which annoyed me for about an hour, and then didn't. Back in my room, I took out Maggie's letter. I held it a long minute before I slid my thumb under the flap. Art, my love, if you're reading this, I'm where the tide goes. Do me a favor, don't get small out of grief. It's okay to be quiet, but don't let anyone turn you into furniture. Jason is dazzled. He may come at you with forms. Meet him with boundaries. Firm, loving, legal. Go to the Cape. Breathe. Remember the winter we ate chowder on the porch in our coats and laughed like fools? Get more days like that. I love you. I love you and I love you. M. I read it twice. Then I tucked it in my wallet like it would keep my spine straight. Jason started texting like a woodpecker. Dad, sending a realtor contact in Toronto. Great guy. Then, Dad, market is hot. We need to list ASAP. Then a little sharp. Dad, don't drag your feet. I'm trying to help. I called Ava. We solid. We are granite, she said. If he tries to list the property, he'll hit the restriction. If he tries to move money, he'll hit my office. You have what you need. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. If he gets nasty, we email the board. If he gets worse, we call the state. I took a walk around the courtyard and breathed. The trick to getting older is letting your heart slow itself instead of holding it by the throat. When I got back to my room, I took a small metal safe, nothing fancy, and put it on the top shelf of the closet where you could see it if you were nosy. Inside, I placed a decade-old royalty statement of Maggie's that still looked shiny, 270,000 and change, and a page with bank account numbers that led to 3 duds I'd created with Ava that did exactly nothing. Then I left the safe a hair open and called my son. Come by, I said. Let's go over what you need. He showed up in the same suit. He hugged me medium. He did a walk around of my little room like he was appraising it. We need to get you acclimated, he said, like I was at altitude. He saw the safe in under a minute. What's this? Your mother's paperwork, I said. Private. Of course, he said, and then launched into a speech about market timing, winter, carrying costs, and the burden on me. I listened until my brain got tired of hearing itself be polite and said, bathroom, and stepped into the hall. When I came back, the safe was open, and the papers were on the bedspread. Jason had the royalty page in his hand like it had bit him. Dad, he said, voice too high. What is this? You and Mom had all this money, and you never told me? We're sitting on a gold mine while you're, what? Doing chair yoga and napping. Who's we? I asked. He blinked. This changes everything. I need to get access to this. I need to move it into a managed account. I need to protect you from people taking advantage. That including you? I said very gently. He didn't laugh. I'm serious. I need full power. We need to consolidate. The cottage, if there's a cottage, needs to be on the market before hurricane season. We need to liquidate before your capacity. Say that again, I said. Capacity, he repeated softer. You're getting older. I'm trying to help. Don't make me the bad guy for trying to help. I looked at my boy and saw a scared man in a suit. Fear dresses up like bossiness all the time. Help me, I said, by not trying to own me. He slammed the papers back into the safe like that would make the numbers go away. Okay, he said. Tomorrow. We'll do it tomorrow. I'll bring what we need. He brought a new stack, different highlights. I signed again, with my pen that looks like a pen and also takes video the way my granddaughter's Barbie looks like Barbie and also records you when you're talking to it. He left with his paperwork, and I called Ava, who put the copies he gave her next to the copies we made and smiled that lawyer smile that means I'm good at my job, kid. A week later, I got a polite email from a title officer in Toronto. Mr. Bennett, we're unable to proceed with listing due to a restriction and life interest on title. Please contact your counsel. The realtor who had been texting me emojis went quiet. Jason called in less than a minute. What is this? He said. No hello. Paperwork, I said. Your mom and I did a thing called planning. You should try it sometime. You're screwing me, he said. I could hear his hand hit something on his desk. I'm breathing and drinking my coffee. That's all I'm doing to you. You're moving to a home. You don't need a house. I have two, I said, and then let that hang in the air until he set it down himself. He didn't want to. He wanted to throw it. He said something I won't repeat, then took a breath like a man remembers he's on speaker. We're meeting with your attorney, he said. I'm not doing this game. Okay, I said and gave him the time. We sat in Ava's conference room, windows looking out over a little slice of city that always looks like ambition. Jason brought his girlfriend, Sabrina, who wore perfume that cost more than my first car and had a face that could cut glass. Ava poured tea. She passed Jason a manila folder that had the words "Do not move" on the first page in Lawyer Talk. Jason, she said, calm as elevators. Your father is of sound mind. We have 2 independent evaluations on file. He has a life interest in the Toronto property, and recorded restrictions prevent any conveyance without his written consent. The royalties from Margaret's work are in an irrevocable trust. Arthur receives the income for life. You are not a beneficiary. Any further attempt to list or transfer assets without consent will result in revocation of any power of attorney you've been given for limited reasons, and a formal complaint to the state for financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. I would recommend you slow down. He stared at her like she was reading from a made-up book. Sabrina opened her mouth, closed it, and then opened it again. We didn't know about the money, she said. He kept it secret. That's not normal. What's normal, Ava said, is privacy. What's illegal is exploitation. If you plan to be in this family's future, take that seriously. Jason looked at me like I'd picked a stranger over blood. You're choosing her over me? I'm choosing your mother, I said. And I'm choosing not to be bullied. Ava slid a small flash drive across the table. This is for you, she said to Jason. It's the recording from last week when you suggested that Arthur might lack capacity and needed to sign over full access to all accounts. I suggest you keep it somewhere safe. It's evidence you don't want anyone else to have to submit. He stood so fast his chair scraped. You two want to play hardball? Fine. He pointed at me. Enjoy bingo. Bingo's on Thursdays, I said, because sometimes you have to fight with the jokes you've got. He left with Sabrina floating in his wake. Ava watched the door close and blew out a long breath like she'd been holding it since law school. You okay? She asked. I'm hungry, I said. And I want to go home. Which one? She asked. The one with the sea, I said. 2 days later, I checked out of the home. Ms. Patel hugged me like a niece, told me the Scrabble table would miss my terrible luck, and made me promise to come back for visiting day because Gordon told the fellas I was coming back to teach them about wiring your own lamp without dying. I drove to the Cape with the windows cracked and the radio low. The marshlands rolled out like a prayer rug. The cottage sat exactly where we left it, as if homes wait like dogs and then pretend they weren't. I opened the door and it smelled like dust sea and the cinnamon of old wood. I set Maggie's wooden duck on the windowsill, the one she carved, badly, our first summer here. I brewed coffee. I walked the porch and looked at the line where the gray water meets the gray sky and told her everything out loud. A gull hopped on the railing like he wanted a cut. I made a plan because that's how I stay upright. I called Ava and we set up the Maggie Bennett Story Fund to buy books for places that tend to smell like bleach and hope. Senior homes, school libraries, women's shelters. I told her I'd fund it with a slice of the royalties every year, and more when I felt like scaring myself in a good way. I called a Canadian realtor who didn't text me emojis and told him when I'm ready, I'll sell the Toronto place the way I want to, cleanly, with somebody getting a home instead of an investment. I pulled the old fishing rod out of the closet and pretended I knew what I was doing. Jason didn't call. People don't call when they don't know how to climb down from the ledge they climbed up. I sent him a text with the address in case he forgot, and a picture of the porch he grew up on. He left me on read, as the kids say. I mowed. I fixed the porch rail he used to jump from. I replaced a cracked outlet in the kitchen and felt more like myself than I had all month. In the freezer, I found the bag of chowder-based Maggie always made, labeled in her handwriting. I cried into it and then made dinner. Every week, a check hit the trust account, neat as a heartbeat. We used to laugh at that, my wife, the overnight success 30 years in. I pictured her signing books at a table she brought from home because the stores wobbled. I pictured the girls who lined up to tell her she changed their minds about themselves. I pictured my granddaughter reading one of Maggie's paperbacks under a blanket with a flashlight because she was supposed to be asleep and because rule-breaking runs in our family when it comes to stories. The state board emailed me a month later. They were reviewing a complaint. Lawyers speak for, your son's license is going to take a little nap. I didn't want him ruined. I wanted him slowed. There's a difference. He came by in September, pulled up in a truck that looked like a commercial for trucks. He sat in it a whole minute before getting out, like the seatbelt had feelings. He walked up the path, took off his sunglasses, and didn't know where to put his hands. I let him stand there until he figured out stairs. This place, he said, looking at the porch, the dunes, the way the wind unbraids your thoughts here. I remember Mom burned a pie here, and you two still ate it in the dark. We did. The memory made my mouth tilt. He sat. We watched the gulls try to steal the world's problems and fail. He pulled a folded letter from his pocket, worn to soft cloth. Maggie's letter to him. He put it between us without looking at it. I read it, he said. Yeah. She said I chase shiny things. She said I confuse money with safety. She said I'll be okay if I let go of the scorecard I keep in my head. His voice wobbled and then didn't. I don't feel okay. I didn't either, I said. Still don't some mornings. I got mad because I was scared. He swallowed hard. I was thinking, if I controlled everything, then nothing bad could sneak up on me. But I turned into a guy I don't like. That happens, I said. Pressure makes people into versions of themselves they want to disown later. The trick is stopping before you can't find your way back. He stared at the horizon the way men do when they think eye contact will knock the apology out of their mouth. Are you going to cut me out? He asked. I'm going to draw lines, I said. You can hate them. You can learn from them. I'm not your retirement plan, son. I'm your father. I love you. That doesn't mean you get to pilot my ship. He nodded, looking way younger than 38. I deserve the board investigation, he said, quiet. I didn't send them the worst thing, I said. I sent enough. He laughed once, not because it was funny. That's generous. It's a line, I said. He looked at his hands. What do I do now? You get a different kind of callus, I said. I got a porch that needs paint, a fence that needs mending, a neighbor whose dock is a lawsuit waiting to happen. You can hang with me, do some work, or you can go back and find a therapist who will tell you what I just did with less swearing. There's a program that helps people who like control more than results. You might check it out. We can have coffee after. I'll be here. He picked a splinter from the arm of the chair and let the wind take it. I'm sorry, he said finally. I know, I said. I still want to smack you upside the head some days. But I also want to make you a sandwich. That's parenting. He laughed a little for real that time. We sat a good long while without talking, which is how men like us say important things we're too clumsy to say out loud. He didn't bring up the money again. Not that day. Not the next. When he left, he hugged me like the hug had to cross a border. I let it pass. fall rolled into winter. I put on Maggie's audiobook sometimes, just for her voice at the end, where she thanks librarians like they're surgeons and laughs when someone asks about inspiration, as if love and bills and trying to get dinner on the table aren't inspiration enough. Snow came, shy at first, then cocky. I sat by the wood stove and wrote a list of all the ways we used to spend Saturday and picked new ones to try alone. I started volunteering at the little library in town, stacking returns, fixing the janky lamp behind the desk, nodding at the kids who came in to use the computers because home was loud. I asked the librarian what they needed. She made the mistake of telling me. The Story Fund wrote its first check that afternoon. The librarian cried like someone turned off a faucet and forgot to turn it back on. I cried in the truck later when no one could see me. In spring, I drove up to Toronto and sold the house on my terms. The couple who bought it had 2 boys who kept bumping into furniture with soccer balls and apologies. The mother looked at the yard like it was a promise. I left a note in the junk drawer about the neighbor who waters plants when you go out of town, and about the loose stare that looks fine until it decides it isn't. The check that hit the account made me feel a kind of lightheaded that wasn't medical. I wired a big slice to the Story Fund and felt Maggie's hand on my shoulder the way you feel heat from a stove before you touch it. I updated my will. Jason gets a lane, not a jackpot. If he wants help paying for therapy, matching funds if he shows up. If he wants to start a real business that isn't about flipping human lives like houses, matching funds if he can put together a plan that doesn't smell like fast. Lila gets the rights to her grandmother's work someday, the kind of wealth you can't spend, love, words, a name on spines. Once a week, Jason texts me like he's trying not to scare the fish. How's the porch? Saw Mom's book at the airport. You need anything? Sometimes I say, bring coffee. He comes. We paint. We don't talk about money. We sand rails. We talk about the game the Sox blew and why his shoulder clicks, and whether he should call that friend he ghosted when everything was falling apart. He picks up my phone to take a picture of the sunset and makes a joke about old man phones. He leaves without checking my mail. That's progress. I tell you all this not because I think I'm clever. I'm not. I'm stubborn and lucky and loved by someone who knew how to plan. There's a difference. Folks think revenge is big and loud. At my age, revenge is a quiet cup of coffee you paid for yourself, while the ocean minds its business and you mind yours. It's paperwork that says no even when your voice shakes. It's saying to a son, I love you and you don't get to run me, and then making chowder and setting out 2 bowls because love makes room. Sometimes late, I stand on the porch and listen for Margaret. Not like a ghost, exactly. More like a song I half remember that comes back when the weather's right. The wind scrapes the chimes, the tide argues with the shore, a fox uses my path like it paid for it. I think about that Tuesday and that Thursday and all the little days since. I think about how grief makes people do math, bad math, the kind where they add up what they think they're owed and subtract all the parts where they were held, fed, taught, forgiven. I try not to do grief math. I count wind gusts instead, or the number of screws I still haven't replaced on the back steps, or the minutes it takes for the kettle to sing, which is always longer when you watch it and exactly right when you don't. I keep Maggie's letter in my wallet. It's soft at the corners now, like any truth I've had to take out and look at. It says don't get small. It says boundaries are love in a hard hat. It says go to the Cape. So I go. And I stay. And when my son pulls up and sits in his truck for a minute before getting out, I give him the time. He's learning to climb down from ledges. That's a skill. When he walks up, I have coffee, and sometimes I have a list. The dock, the fence, the window stuck in the back bedroom, the ghost of the woman we both loved standing between us asking us to be better men. We try. Some days we get there. If you're listening because you've got a Jason, or you are one, or you're a Maggie who loves 2 fools and wants the house to still be standing when they're done, hear me. Make a map. Put the lines where they go. Life is messy, paper helps. You can love somebody and still not hand them the keys to your soul. You can say no and have it be a gift. You can smile and sign when you already did the work. I was married 41 years to a woman who believed in tidy endings, but wrote real ones instead. I don't know what the end is here. I know the cottage is sturdy. I know the tide is on time. I know a granddaughter is going to stand on this porch someday with a book that has her name on it and read out loud to a man who used to think control would save him. That's not revenge. That's mercy. That's better. For now, I'm Arthur Bennett. I make coffee my way. I read the letters people write to the story fund and try not to cry when they thank me for something I didn't do alone. I take calls from a son who's learning the difference between being in charge and being a man. I fix things that try to come apart. I sit on a porch that knows my weight. And when I think about the Thursday, he said, "Sign over the Toronto house. You're moving to a home." I remember the feeling in my chest when I smiled and signed everything. It wasn't surrender. It was the sound of a plan clicking into place. It was the door at the cottage opening to a house that never forgot me. That's my story. If you're old enough to be stubborn and young enough to change, you can borrow any part of it you like. The rest you'll have to build yourself, with steady hands, the right tools, and a little space on the porch for when the people you love find their way back.